Hi, I'm Jean Brittingham with Kept in Stitches, where we bring friends together in the form of a good old-fashioned quilting bee, only in a new modern form of a stitching bee, not only for quilting, but an array of forms of stitching, such as embroidery, slow stitching, cross stitching, or whatever your favorite form of stitching may be. You're welcome to come and join us. Today is Tip Demo Tuesday, and I was asked a few days ago what the best tools are for marking for hand quilting, or what my favorite tools for hand quilting marking may be. So today I'm going to share with you what my most used and my favorite tools are that I use for hand quilting and marking my quilts. My favorite all-time tool for marking is the General's white chalk pencil. I love it because it can be used on a multitude of fabrics. It stays on while you're quilting, but is easy to remove when you're done quilting and don't have to worry about any marks being left in your quilt. I am able to use it in my electric pencil sharpener, so it gets a nice, fine, sharp point on the end. The only drawback to this is, yes, you do have to sharpen it quite frequently, so make sure you have a pencil sharpener also in your sewing kit for when you're not by your electric pencil sharpener. Of course, it doesn't show up on light fabrics. There are different colors out there. I only use white, so if I'm using a dark fabric, if I'm using a light fabric, this is not the tool I will use. I will use it for my medium to dark fabrics. My next favorite tool is the Soline Quilter's mechanical graphite pencil. This has a nice fine graphite lead in it, leaving a fine thin pencil-like mark for marking your quilts. This is good for your light fabrics, not your medium and dark, where you would use the chalk pencil instead. It also has an optional eraser that you can purchase for it to help remove the lines, just for that special lid, or it comes out easily just with a fabric eraser, a damp cloth, brushing it, you'll be able to remove this. It comes in white and other colors. I only use the white or the pencil, mainly the pencil. If I'm going to use white, I'm going to use the chalk pencil rather than this one, in all honesty. But those are my two favorite. Another one that I use is the Bone. It is also chalk. It is a mechanical chalk pencil, so it has a very fine white chalk lead in it for those fine marks. You can also use gray chalk in this, so if you have a quilt that has lights and darks in it, this is a great one to use. Have a couple of them. Have the gray chalk in one, the white chalk in the other. It's the only two that you'll need for marking your quilt that way. They both remove easily from your quilts. Again, you can use your fabric eraser. That will take them out, or again, a damp cloth. Once you wash your quilt, all your marks are gone. So those are three of my favorites. One of the other things is with the Generals, which is because it's the one that I use most frequently and is the easiest for use. And I also want to show you this quilt back here that I have marked. And I marked the whole entire quilt prior to starting quilting. It's in the hoop in process with the white chalk marker. As you can see, the white is still there where it hasn't been quilted. It hasn't rubbed off. You can get up against it. It's not going to rub off and come off that easily that you have to worry about, oh, it's chalk. Am I going to rub up against it? Is it going to disappear? No, it stays on there nicely, yet comes off very easily when you are finished with your marks. I actually wear one of these little rubber tips on my index finger while I'm hand quilting to help pull the needle out. It will actually act as an eraser and erase part of that chalk as you're quilting. What doesn't come out with it, you can just brush off, damp cloth, wash again, and it will come out. But you don't have to worry about your marking lines being gone before you get a chance to quilt it. One of the reasons why it's one of my favorites. As for using the graphite mechanical pencil, I have used it enough that I know if I am quilting on a quilt that has questionable, kind of medium dark fabrics that you're not sure it's going to show up on because it's darker, you can mark heavier with this and it will still come out. This is a big stitch quilt that I have in progress. You can see that I have marked the entire quilt with my grid prior to quilting, and I have heavily marked it through the darker fabrics, which, let me get to one of the darker ones down here. But there are darker fabrics on this, and by marking it heavily, I can still see it, but I know that it's going to have no problem removing those marks afterward. They will come right out in the wash, damp cloth, erase it, and they're gone. So those are my favorite forms and what I feel are the best tools for marking your hand quilts. I do not, and you will not find me using the air erasable or the washout blue markers. Rarely do I use them, only because I don't like to put anything into my quilt that I'm afraid may come back to haunt me later. I know many quilters use these. It's just not my preference. I will use them occasionally on rare times that I just need it for some reason that something else isn't working. I do not, when I use the washout blue one, I do not spritz it to remove it. I wash it totally out of my quilt. Sometimes when you only just spritz it, you're only removing that from that top layer. It can still be in the bottom fibers of that fabric, and in the batting may reappear later to haunt you. The disappearing one, the reason I don't use it often is because it's very temporary. You can only mark what you're going to be quilting right away, because that ink, depending on the temperature and the humidity in your room, can disappear very quickly. And then what you've marked, you have to go back and remark because your marking's already gone. So that's why I only use these very rarely. I do use them, but very rarely. Another marker, however, as you get older, these aren't as easy to use, and that's the Hera marker. You of course don't have to worry about anything to move, because all it does is leave, and I'm going to press on this fabric. You press, it's good for straight line quilting, and it will leave an indentation line on your fabric for you to follow to use as your marking line. You cannot mark with this when it's already, if your quilt is already hooped. It has to be on a hard surface to use. So that is one drawback from that. The other, as I said, it's good if you don't have arthritic hands and if you still have good eyesight, because it's not as easy to see that crease in the fabric, especially if it's a light fabric. It's going to be harder to see than a dark fabric. And it also takes a little bit of strength and oomph to mark hard enough to make that crease through all your layers so that it shows up. So that's my tip demo for today on what are my favorite tools for marking hand quilting. I hope that you have enjoyed this, that you have gotten some tips. Maybe I've showed you a method that you haven't tried or that you were wondering about, and now you know some more information about it, maybe willing to go and give it a try on your quilts. So have a wonderful day. I'll be back again soon. Bye-bye.